Welcome to I Said What I Said, a sports podcast giving you opinions not heard anywhere else. I'm your host, Brad Wakai, alongside my co-host, Tyson Gentry. And Tyson, we're back in the saddle. We finished up all of our college football previews. We just had week 0. Week 1 is coming up this weekend. So we're fully into college football, but we still have a little bit of time in the NFL. So we're going to continue to go through our division previews before we get into our betting extravaganza and we talk win totals and futures and all that good stuff.
Ladies and gentlemen, you will have a football game on every Thursday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday for the next 3 months. We did it.
Oh, sounds so good. So let's get into it. We're talking about the AFC South today. And if this is your first time tuning in, what we're going to do is just talk about the division and kind of how we see it, and then go on a team-by-team basis, just talking about how we think they're going to do this year. No betting angle on this one at all. It's just strictly football. And Tyson, when it comes to the AFC South, this is a division that's been so janky over the years, right? Like, it's like one of the ones that people forget about because the Texans have been terrible. The Jaguars are hit or miss and mainly miss. The Colts, now that Andrew Luck and Peyton Manning are gone, have been really put on the back burner. And then you have the Titans, who were really good for a while with Derrick Henry and the offense that they were running and the defensive specialty that they had, but they weren't able to win the big one. So it was like, oh, it's great regular season story and nothing in the playoffs. It feels like we're in a new era here, though, with these quarterbacks and coaches.
Dude, we're in a new era of the AFC South every 2 years. Like, it's a revolving door city. When T-Law came in, it was him in Jacksonville, and now it's been 3 years, 4 whole years or whatever of that experience, so we're over it. We don't care anymore. We had Deshaun and the Texans, and they were going to take everything over, and then obviously all the stuff with Deshaun, the Texans were dead, and now they're the most exciting team in football. The Colts, we got 14 snaps of Anthony Richardson, and we were ready to crown these guys as division champs, and then all of a sudden it was like, oh, I don't know how they're going to look coming in this year because A-Rich had a bad preseason game. And then the Titans are a mess, fired Vrabel. We'll get into that a little bit, and we've discussed that. But this is the most revolving door, I think, division. It's not like – and the other divisions have tons of turnover, but this is just like wild shuffling every year.
So let's get into the Houston Texans, because last year heading into the season, people were laughing at them, right? They were a laughing stock. Oh, my God, how could you trade up for Will Anderson? This is stupid. And it's like, if you're the Houston Texans, though, man, you just need to start getting good players into your program. And that's what we said, right? Like, we were one of the ones who kind of went against the grain where everybody's like, well, they're just going to be giving that pick away anyway. Well, it turns out, Tyson, they might actually know what they're doing over there in the front office, which is a first in a while. 10-7, won the division. C.J. Stroud looks like a future star. So what do they do this offseason? They double down on his rookie contract. They make a high-risk, high-reward move to go get Stephon Diggs, the pair at the wide receiver position. And then they just continue to turn the defense over to DeMeco Ryans and just let him go to work and start building this program. You have the young guys in the back end and on the line, and let's bring in some veterans to show them the way. A lot of expectations are placed on the Texans' shoulders this year. We know what happens when rookies go from their first year to their second year. You normally take a step back. Is there enough infrastructure in place that you think they can build upon what they did?
I don't know if there's enough infrastructure in place, but I tell you what, I believe in C.J. Stroud. It's in a way that I don't think I believed in most of these other quarterbacks going into year 2. Yeah, the NFL might figure him out a little bit. What does that look like? Is that still 4,000 passing yards? Is it still 30 passing touchdowns? Minimal turnovers, things like that's who I think he could be in a quote-unquote down year. I still expect Nico Collins to be the number 1 wide receiver in this offense, and I expect Tank Dell to still get his targets. I think playing with fire a little bit, because I think we know what Steph Diggs is. He's never happy. He's never been happy on any football team that he's been on. And I think that there's more target competition here than anywhere else, but we know everything there is to know about the wide receivers. It's been talked about ad nauseum this whole summer. Brad, just sticking with the offense quickly, how fast did this Joe Mixon thing kind of get swept under the rug? And maybe he is washed. Maybe he's not. Maybe he is just good enough to be an upgrade over Singletary and unlock another part of this offense that we don't know is there currently.
That's the question, because you need a running game, I think, to really have this thing in motion. Devin Singletary had a good year last year. Dameon Pierce, we were kind of waiting. He had a really good rookie season and fell off. So if Joe Mixon can be the guy that he was for the Bengals, a productive workhorse back, you're looking at a next step, I think, because Joe Mixon is a better player than Devin Singletary, even I think coming off of his good year last year. So that'll be something that I'm monitoring, because if their running game can go and Joe Mixon can give them 4 yards per carry, pop a couple here and there, I mean, that's going to take pressure off CJ Stroud. Sneaky pickup. I think it was good for both teams, Bengals, and we'll get into the Bengals at a later episode. But I do think it was a good pickup from the Texans. But Tyson, what does it do when you bring Stephon Diggs in? And you kind of mentioned off the top, like, are you concerned that this thing could combust? Because we saw, early on in Minnesota, really good, and then things deteriorated. It was great in Buffalo, and then things deteriorated. Where it seems like it's an addition by subtraction in Buffalo. I think it's a high risk move here, but the ceiling they can get by bringing in someone like Stephon Diggs is huge for this wide receiver room.
And we'll see. Maybe Diggs will surprise us, but my point to that would be that all those things happened after 1 year, and maybe he's going to come in here and go, look at my All Pros, my Pro Bowls, my accolades. I deserve to be the number one player on the football team. The last 8, 9, 10 weeks of his career in Buffalo don't support that to me. And I'm very interested to see how the targets are divvied up. I'll see how slow it kind of, if he's going to slow play this thing, or if he's going to, make 14 kind of the centerpiece of the offense here. There's no wrong decision, I think, for this team, which is really nice. I think Nico Collins is going to be a guy that maybe can live with 115 targets instead of 150. I don't know if Tank Dell and Stephon Diggs are that kind of guy. We'll find that out. Winning cures all. And I think that they're in a position to win more games, certainly than people thought they would be a year ago at this time. But even at this 10.5 number that they have here on FanDuel, it's a really good team. It's a defense that got better. It's a defense that got one more year learning a system that just, if you look around the NFL, all the best defenses in the league are running some variation of this. I expect Houston, this division sucks. And so maybe they're not going to win 6 games here, but let's say you get 4 free ones as you kind of go through this, obviously counting health. The Texans are in a great spot to have somebody. Is it NRG Stadium? That's where they play, to host a playoff game instead of having to go on the road play somebody.
The future's bright in Houston. I don't think anybody would have thought that coming into the draft
Remember
last year.
When CJ Stroud got a bad S2 grade and some agent leaked it so that he was never going to be good at football?
I think they're out of business now, S2. Like, actually.
Yeah. Weird how that happened, huh?
Well, it's kind of a disaster. It's like, this guy's going to be bad. And then he puts together like the most prolific rookie season ever. Yeah, it's going to be tough to get a contract out of that for those guys. Okay, let's move into the Jaguars because, 2 seasons ago, it was, wow, it's Trevor Lawrence and Doug Peterson. You get rid of the stink of Urban Meyer. You bring in a Super Bowl winning head coach, Doug Peterson. Woo, look at how Trevor Lawrence is going to take his career to the next level. First year he did, right? Like, it was his best year. He looked great. This offense was prolific. They were passing. And then last year it started off hot, and then they completely fell apart down the stretch, blew the division, didn't get into, really reached the amount of expectations that they should have missed the playoffs. Tyson, to go 9-8 after where they were is a complete disaster. And so we talked about this during draft season. Where did the Jaguars falter? It was in the secondary, and it was in the trenches, and it was the mentality of being too soft. So what do? Oh, let's go get another wide receiver. And it's just the thing with Trent Baalke, and you just kind of scratch your head. Now, is it because they lost Calvin Ridley? So they're like, well, like you said, like you kind of alluded to, Gabe Davis is here, and then you draft Brian Thomas. Okay, well, that mitigates that. They had absolutely zero addressing of what was actually the problem for them last year. So how do you see the Jaguars? Like, do you continue to be low on them? Are you a little bit higher on them coming in because it's another year and with Peterson and Lawrence, or where are you at with this team?
I'm in the same spot I was a year ago. I think that the common discussion last year was like, oh, look at all the positive momentum that they gained. My biggest thing with Jacksonville, and it has been the same, it's going to continue to be the same until I see differently. Travis Etienne is awesome. He averages like 3.5 yards a carry. That's not good enough, especially for somebody that's going to be a bell cow. It's not his fault when you're getting hit at the line of scrimmage and having to make something out of nothing over and over and over again. They tried to bring in Tank Bigsby through the draft a couple years ago. It doesn't look that went the way they want. There's some smoke maybe that he's going to get a little bit more work this season. They need it. They need somebody to spell Etienne because it's criminal the way that they're using that dude in today's NFL. It's funny that they double down on wide receiver, as you mentioned. We personally didn't think like Brian Thomas Jr. is a fine pick, but to pair that with signing Gabe Davis as soon as the free agency period opens is an interesting combo. But let's not forget this is the same group that paid Christian Kirk $1 bajillion. It's the same group that went out and got Calvin Ridley. Evan Ingram continues to be awesome. He's kind of shed that almost bust label that he got coming out of Ole Miss. Tight ends take a while, folks. We've told you that a million times. He has arrived. I still think this defense is going to be a little soft. And you mentioned, are they going to be better under this year of Doug Peterson? We don't have a huge sample size of Doug Peterson as a head coach, but you notice the flag behind Brad. Typically, this is when things start to go south, actually, in a Doug Peterson tenure. So I'm kind of interested to see maybe there's a powder keg brewing in Jacksonville as well. It can't be fun. Like everyone hears Trevor Lawrence has been the same since he was a freshman in college. Everyone hears Doug Peterson's been the same since 2018, the year after winning the Super Bowl. And everyone hears the Jacksonville Jaguars have been the same for 19 games in a row. And I don't expect a lot to change. I think there's going to be some angst there, but they don't have the horses, man.
Yeah, that's the issue. So two things that you said that I completely agree with and I want to address. First, with the Peterson thing, Philadelphia, what he did there to bring the first Super Bowl, it's never going to be forgotten, and he's a legend in the city. But you have to also take a look at what happened on the way out the door. The team completely crumbled. The injuries piled up. Like there was clearly something wrong with the health staff there. And what does it do? It translates over immediately, gets to Jacksonville, and they're starting to have health issues. Like at some point, the program that's being led as a result of the head coach. Now, I'm not putting it's variance and you get unlucky with injuries, but I mean, when there's smoke, there's fire. And it seems like there's a lot of smoke happening around Doug Peterson and whenever he's in charge of the Eagles or the Jaguars when it comes to health. But with that being said, he's a real head coach. Is he the ceiling year in and year out to lead a team to the Super Bowl? I think that's where we have to pump the brakes on him a little bit. Like he had a great run and it was magical. What is his true ceiling now? Because I think it can be winning the AFC South, but is it on a year in and year out basis? They weren't able to do that last year. Now, when it comes to Trevor Lawrence, like Tyson said, it seems like he's plateaued, and I think the numbers would suggest that. He even took a step back last year, which is concerning. But a lot of the reports coming out are the injury was a lot more severe than people knew about and reported about, which I think is fair, right? Like if your shoulder is injured and you're not able to be accurate and throw, that is going to be an issue, and that's going to cause poor performance. Is it healthy this year? Is this a lingering thing? Is it this offensive line isn't able to protect them? All of a sudden, week 3, boom, the shoulder goes down again. So that's something to monitor. But if he comes into this thing healthy, which for all reports are saying that he looks really good and really sharp, that raises the ceiling. I think this is a team with a high floor. Like, I don't think they're going to bottom out like they have in the past where they're winning 4 or 5 games. But is the ceiling being able to win this division, win 12 games? Or is it what they did last year? We can hover around 9 to 10 as long as Peterson and Lawrence are in charge. That's my question about the Jags. Moving on to the Colts. And you want to talk about a darling, Tyson. Holy smokes. Just give them the Super Bowl trophy right now. Just give them the next 5. I mean, man, Shane Steichen, and it was impressive with what they did last year. I mean, 9-8, Gardner Minshew being the quarterback. Anthony Richardson played 4 games, got hurt for the year, and everybody wants to crown him already as the best in the NFL, or, oh my God, that's being a little facetious, obviously. But, I mean, people are talking about this guy like he's freaking Cam Newton. I mean, he's played 4 games. It looked good. There was bad spots at times, too. Like, we got to slow down a little bit on here. So people are saying this is the division winner. Like, take the Colts. Look what Steichen did with his team last year. Tyson, Gardner Minshew was in the system that Shane Steichen had run with the Philadelphia Eagles. He was familiar. This wasn't like he just took somebody off the street and was like, oh, you're my quarterback now. Like, it wasn't Josh Dobbs going to the Vikings. Like, that was impressive to me. I mean, that was crazy with that little run that Kevin O'Connell was doing there. The fact that Gardner Minshew is winning games, that's what you sign backup quarterbacks to do. That's why you bring in people who are familiar with the system. So I wasn't necessarily shocked that they were winning games. The amount of games that they were able to win, the 9, was impressive. But I think there are still concerns that I have with the Indianapolis Colts coming in that I'm not sure they addressed, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But where are you at on Indianapolis?
Well, I think they're going to have maybe the best rushing attack in the league this year. And I think that helps. This is assuming Anthony Richardson's healthy, as you mentioned, hasn't played a ton. Also, I do want to point out to people that like the likelihood of him becoming top 3, as we're hearing, is the same likelihood that he's just Trey Lance. And we just saw like a couple really good games. I mean, the dude hasn't hardly played organized football, and then when he does play, he's hurt right away. We want Anthony Richardson to be good. I think he's electric, and I think he helps out Jonathan Taylor quite a bit. I mean, what are you picking on a mesh when you got 28 or 8 or 15 pulling that thing out and running 4.4 around the edge of 255 pounds? That's going to be interesting. I'm always interested to see my boy Michael Pittman, how he's going to look this year. I think with the addition of Adonai Mitchell through the draft, some of the things we saw through the preseason can maybe mitigate some of the Josh Downs being out for the first 4 weeks. They lined AD up in the slot a little bit in the preseason, and I only assume that's to get him live reps at a position that he's probably going to have to see during the regular season. There's news today. Jelani Woods goes to the IR. He's out for the year. So now you're looking at that tight end room and you're going, is it Kylie Granson? Is it going to be Will Mallory? For most teams, you'd say it doesn't matter that much. Shane Steichen loves to use his tight ends. He didn't get to use it a ton or use them a ton last year. Gardner Minshew still found one of the 5. They have 5 of the same dudes, but I expect that to be a little bit bigger of an issue, and I don't think this wide receiving core is all that good enough to elevate a guy like Anthony Richardson, who has interesting pass numbers, to say the least, or interesting amount of career passes, even seeing some of these looks that he's going to get. And then we go to the offensive line. That's continually one of the more overrated units in the NFL. I think they've been really good, and they have a ceiling that is really high. They just have more variance week to week than your Cleveland Browns or your Philadelphia Eagles or whatever other offensive line you want to put at the top. Maybe the Colts put that together for 17 straight this year. I don't see it. I'll be interested. I mean, that would be awesome. And then the defense just kind of feels like, hey, let's grab as many big-name dudes as we can, or as many former first-round guys as we can, and try to shove them into these holes and make them play the roles that we want them to play. Now, if that works, it's awesome. And we've seen it work with certain guys here in the past. It's just that's not a strategy for success. And it almost feels to me, Brad, that they're looking at the defense and doing let's just go get Carson Wentz. Let's just go get Matt Ryan. And just like, Stephon Gilmore, he's famous. Let's go. He'll be cornerback 1 this year. Defensive line should be good. And I think that's going to be a huge thing, at least getting after the passer. We'll see how they stop the run. But the questions remain the same, I think, for Indianapolis, which is a common theme outside of the Houston Texans within this division.
Yeah, my concern with the defense is the same. It's Gus Bradley. He's your defensive coordinator. I mean, the league has figured out that cover 3. Like it's over. Like, you got to adjust.
Bend and break defense.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, so if without being just a complete, hyperbolic, like, oh, they're going to be bad. Like, let's give some reasons here. I think there's a chance that they could take a step forward if the defensive line is able to get a pass rush, right? So you bring in DeForest Buckner, you sign Raekwon Davis, you get back Grover Stewart. Okay, let's build on the interior. Let's build at least some push so that if we're going to continue to run this defense, because that's what Gus Bradley does, and he hasn't adapted out of that cover 3. So how can we improve it? Let's get a pass rush. Let's get after the quarterback. Let's allow the system to operate. Because remember, with the Seahawks, why were they dominant? Oh, my God. They could just rush forward, get after the passer, and then let the guys in the back end make some plays, let the linebackers play downhill. You have Zaire Franklin. You have good linebackers. If they are able to generate a pass rush, I think the defense can take a step forward. Tyson, I am not sold on that happening. That's why I'm still a little bearish on the fact that this Colts team is going to take a step forward. As it stands right now, for me, this is the 3rd best team in the division.
I would maybe go 2, but I see 3 as well.
Let's close it out here with the Tennessee Titans. And for my money, this is the most interesting team in the division because they're doing a complete change in philosophy. Like, they went from Mike Vrabel, fired him this offseason, bring in Brian Callahan. He was the offensive coordinator at the Bengals. What are they going to do? They're going to spread this baby out. They're going to put the ball in Will Levis's hands. They're going to basically just see, can you play this position? And it's going to be interesting because if this guy hits, man, we saw it in limited time last year. Holy smokes. There are some throws you're like, man, I think there's maybe 3, 4, 5 guys on the planet who can throw the ball like that. I mean, it was crazy. Now he makes mistakes. He has limited reps. Like, I'm a Penn State guy. He didn't play a lot, right? Sean Clifford was in front of him. He goes to Kentucky, played 2 years there, got some exposure to Liam Cohen, little offensive NFL OC. Then he left for his senior year, and they kind of took a step back. So he's had a change in offensive philosophies pretty much throughout his secondary career following high school football. Is Brian Callahan going to be able to simplify things? That's the question. So you go out and get Calvin Ridley, big playmaker, alongside DeAndre Hopkins. Now he's hurt. He's going to have to be healthy, but you kind of only need him, I think, to just be healthy. Let's let Calvin Ridley and some of the young bucks take the load here and then have DeAndre Hopkins when you can. But Tyson, this defense, you want to talk, I mean, it struggled last year. They were super young. They completely overhauled who they wanted to bring in. I mean, you trade for L'Jarius Sneed, Sebastian Joseph Day, Kenneth Murray, who, we're not necessarily sold on a linebacker, but at least it's somebody who can play in the NFL position. Jamal Adams, we're kind of off him at safety. I think probably, Denard Smith or Denard Wilson, their defensive coordinator. I think they're going to utilize him more as a box safety and have him play the linebacking position. So I'm curious to see how this defense takes a step forward. I mean, it'll be curious to see if this complete change in philosophy for the Titans comes to fruition right now.
Yeah, I think you laid that out really well. One thing that I would add when you bring in a guy like Brian Callahan is that you get his dad. You get Bill Callahan to come in here and coach the offensive line. He is one of the top 2 or 3 offensive line coaches in the NFL. He's been one of the top 2 or 3 line coaches in the NFL for pretty much the entirety of Brad and I's lifetime. And I think that is something that's going to be really beneficial to Will Levis, to Tajay Spears, to Tony Pollard, who they go out and they pay a bunch of money to, and to this offense as a whole. There were times last year where it was like, oh, wow, there's 5 people walking that can make that throw Will Levis just made. But there were also times where it was like, oh, wow, there's 5 people walking that would ever make that decision that Will Levis just made. And that, I think, is going to be the biggest issue, because if he's turning the ball over all the time, and his touchdown-interception ratio and fumbles and all of that stuff at Kentucky, those were things you could point to and just go, he's got a cannon, but, like, what the hell? Like, what is he thinking on some of these things? And maybe that goes away. I would have liked to see them attempt to maybe go out and get a different style of wide receiver than Calvin Ridley. I appreciate what Calvin Ridley can bring. I also just, like, you're rolling in the season with Chig Okonkwo. I think we're over this experiment for him at tight end. So I think the pass game is still going to be a little bit worse than it looks on paper. I think we're getting a lot of DeAndre Hopkins is going to be as good as he was last year, and Calvin Ridley is going to be as good as he was last year. And Ridley had 1 billion targets, and I think he had one of the higher uncatchable target rates in the league, so he's still always open. We know that. How much is that going to change going from Trevor Lawrence to Will Levis? And what does that look like? How do you divvy up the carries on the offensive end? I think you laid out the defensive stuff beautifully. So I'm more focused. Let's see if Tony Pollard and Tajay Spears can be the engine to this offense, so Will Levis doesn't have to do it.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. And I got to say, Tyson, I got to ask you a question. If the Titans win this division, are people just going to be wearing that mayonnaise cologne that Will Levis has now, or what's the deal in Nashville?
I think they'll wear I think, if anything, Brian Callahan should come out and say, I'll cut off my pinky to win this division. A little Mike Vrabel tribute.
Yeah, that'd be good. All right, let's do some closing thoughts on the AFC South here. I mean, again, we'll get into our betting angles, but I mean, where are you thinking right now? Who are you leaning towards as the best team and all that good stuff before we get out of here?
I think Houston's the best team. I think, if anything, Tennessee would be like there's only really one long shot in this division, but sitting there at plus 950 on FanDuel Sportsbook, you can sprinkle that if you want to. I think personally, this is a 1 playoff team division.
I'm hearing the Houston stuff, and it's hard for me to go against it. I mean, they did a good job this offseason, I thought, to alleviate some of the concerns that you may have coming off their season. But it's hard for me to go against Jacksonville just because they've done it before. And we know this division, Tyson, what a roller coaster. I mean, my God. I mean, maybe the Colts do win it. Maybe the Titans win it. I don't know. Who can pick it? But I think in terms of power ratings, it's Houston's the best team in this division, followed by Jacksonville. Then I think the Colts, there's a lot of love there. I still see a bunch of holes in this roster, and I think the Titans are a few years away from, having the pieces together in this puzzle. So, all right, well, that'll do it for this episode of the AFC South. Like, subscribe, and share the show. We're going through a ton of divisional previews this week, so make sure to stay in tune to that. So that's why I want to stay subscribed here, whether it's a podcast or YouTube. Make sure to not miss a thing as we get you ready for the NFL season. So we'll talk to the NFC South next, Tyson. That'll be the next one that comes out Interesting division as well, and another one that's pretty irrelevant in the grand scheme of things, but should be a fun one. So we'll talk to you guys then. Peace.